there's the 8 pillars of wellness. So, we're not going to go through all of those things, but you can see physical makes sense. Social, what kind of social supports do you have to help you with staying safe and healthy? Emotional is a big one. I mean, you could be physically doing all the right things, but emotionally, if you're distraught or not feeling balanced, that's going to affect your health in some ways, right? Occupational, what if you work in a sort of dangerous type of job, or in a job where there are more toxins? Like, I think of this, and you may not think of this one, but when I worked as a rehabilitation consultant, I met with people in their homes to talk about why they're off work and disabled, and to help them get back to work. Do you know how many people I saw with that ended up with cancer because they worked in a paint store? Can you believe that? Remember the old days when they had lead in the paint? Do you remember there was a time when there was lead in the paint, and they had to fix all the schools because, like, young kids, like, you end up in their mouth, like touching the walls and doing all that stuff. That was where it was even more prevalent. Nobody needs lead in their paint. But I remember this was quite a few years back when that was a big deal. Well, thank goodness we don't put lead in the paint, but they still put stuff in our paint. So when I was doing this job of mine for 12 years, I saw 4 people, and they were men because they worked in the paint store at the hardware store, that ended up with the same kind of rare-ish disease, cancer. And nobody put 2 and 2 together, except I did, because I would see these files. So again, think about your environment. Where have you worked? My dad was around a lot of fumes. He worked as a mechanic for most of his life. So financial, nobody can say to me that finances doesn't make a difference with your health and wellness. Yes, to a certain point, then I think it can maybe be detrimental if you have too much money because you get into bad habits. But I think if you're living around the poverty line, you might not be able to afford the healthy food and the healthy whatever you need. So I do believe that helps or affects it. Spiritual, same thing. Spiritual, I feel like people that are grounded and have some kind of spiritual connection usually are more balanced with their health and wellness. Intellectual as well. Were you able to get educated? Or are you coming from a place where maybe education wasn't free and you weren't able to be as educated? Because the more we know, the better we do. Like, what's the saying? We do better when we know better. We do better when we know better. I'm glad that you're all here today to learn more things. So then we get to the environmental, and that's what we're going to talk mostly. We're going to talk specifically about is the environmental things. So let's keep moving along. So why do you think that toxic chemicals are a problem with older adults? So I, again, curate all my classes to be specifically for us, 50 years old and higher, right? Because that's what I consider. Actually, a 50-year-old will be pretty upset if you say that they're an older adult. I do believe it's 55, right? 55 here in Canada anyways. So I'm 56. I just turned 56. So 55 is when you are considered an early senior in that first category. Of course, as I said, if you're in your 50s, nobody wants to be called a senior. Not that that's a bad word, but why do you think it's a problem for our cohort of our age group? Because there's lots of contradicting information, advice out there in pamphlets, on the internet. We all can do a Google search or whatever search engine you use and look up something. And 1 minute it'll say coffee's good for you. Then you can find somebody that says coffee's bad for you. There's so much contradicting information. You don't sometimes know which way is up, right? That's one of the hugest reasons. So when you're a kid, maybe, I don't know, these days kids are Googling everything too, but when you're a kid, you're maybe not that interested. So you're not searching those things. You're searching other things. But for us adults, as soon as we're curious, we go onto the internet and then we go down a rabbit hole, and then we don't know what's what. What I always suggest to all of you is when that happens, I want you to make sure whatever you're reading, that you go scroll all the way down to the bottom and find out who is subsidizing this article. Is it because they're trying to sell you their toothpaste? Is it because they're against, they want you to enjoy it, like the sugar industry did that with they brought fat out, fat's bad. Do you remember that actually happened to all of us and we all got affected at the time when sugar was being toted? Like, I don't know, it was a fight between sugar and fat. And so the sugar industry, did all this marketing to all of us. to say fat's bad, fat's bad. So then we all went to low fat. Did that help us? No, we all got fatter, bigger because of all the sugar in these low fat things. So again, marketing, who's got the money? Who's got the wallet? What is the saying? I think that's the fattest wallet, who can do all these things. So the other thing is, fortunately, it's good if you have young families and kids, and we probably have grandkids and maybe children that have, are a younger family, but most of the information out there research-wise is targeted to young families. Did you know that? It's not targeted to us. They're not targeting our group, like where we might be health-wise and stuff like that, which is the next point. Older adults may be at higher risk of some of these toxins that are in our environment because of our age, and then the probability of probably having one or two medical conditions. So it doesn't mean and we're all sick when we get to a certain age. It just means we're at higher risk of having, emphysema, or, having arthritis, or having diabetes. And therefore, these toxins are worse for us. But the studies don't tell us that, because the studies are really all about the younger families. Now, toxins, these are the two that it was like an aha for me when I realized, oh yeah, that's true. Toxins, when we're at this age, they've had decades to build up in our bodies. So something like, like the pesticide on an apple, for example, it's not killing you at 20, but like if you love apples and you're eating them and you're getting the same toxin, is that particular toxin building up in your body? Now you're 60. Now maybe it's the tipping point where that's now going to affect you. I didn't think about this one. This is the one that my husband told me, and I went, wow, that's a really, really good point. So if you are in your 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe even some people that come to class are in their 80s, you've had a long time to build up certain toxins. Now, this is the other one. Now, I am not against doctors, because I think they're, usually for the most part, they're selfless. They went into a profession to help us. It's a slog. Like, I didn't go through medicine because it was too many years. I wanted to, but I thought, I ended up doing my nursing degree, which was 4 years. But most people that go into like medicine is, I don't know, it's a lot of years of school. Is it 8 years? I think it's a lot of years. So doctors are busy people. They're busy people. Unless they've had like a patient after another patient that kind of twigs their thoughts here, going, I've seen a few people with the same rash. Maybe they would then look into a little bit more research into like finding out what's going on in the community that could be possibly causing this. But most of the time, they're not really up to date with their knowledge when it comes to toxins, just because they're busy. They're busy doing other things. They're busy giving medication